Hi, guys, and welcome to another episode of the Meat Medic podcast. In today's episode, I am talking with Jarrod, who is an amazing guy, just all around good guy, but also a body hacker, functional breathing practitioner. And we talk about pretty much just everything as far as body hacking in this episode. We talk about healing with breathing. We talk about taking ice baths. We talk about stress, anxiety. We talk about dopamine. We talk about the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. I mean, you guys have got to listen to this episode. It's absolutely great. Hi, guys, and welcome to another episode of the Meat Medic podcast. Now, today I'm joined by my special guest, Jarrod Stevenson, who is a holistic, he's working towards holistic life coaching. But Jarrod is an exercise scientist, breathwork coach, and health and fitness professional. And he's here to talk about breathwork and holistic coaching. So, Jarrod, if you can give a little bit of introduction to yourself, to the listeners and the viewers, and we'll talk about breathing and holistic life coaching.
Yeah, for sure. So, I guess a good point to start is where I got started. So, where I'm at the moment. So I'm in Brisbane, working as a personal trainer, doing strength and conditioning work and doing some breath work as part of that. I got started back in, I guess, 2016 when I guess Wim Hof, and some people that are in the breathwork and cold bath community know him. You heard him on like a Vice documentary. My dad told me to come into his office, said, "Hey, look at this." And
Oh, I think I've lost you, Jarrod.
Just a whole range of things there. So we started on a Sunday just doing ice baths in the bathtub. And so
Jarrod, I lost you. I lost you there.
Oh, okay.
For a while. So I might just go back to the start if that's all right.
Yeah, that's cool.
Just kind of, I missed like a minute of you talking.
Oh,
it just froze.
Is it my end, do you think?
It was still recording, so it just kind of froze on your end. But you're good now, so I don't know. We'll restart again if that's all right.
Yeah, no worries.
We'll edit this a little bit out. So,
no worries.
Okay, never mind. I'll shut it out. That's fine. Hi, guys, and welcome to another episode of the Meat Medic podcast. Now, today I'm joined by my special guest, Jarrod, who is a personal trainer, breathwork coach, and health and fitness professional, an exercise scientist, and currently working towards holistic life coaching as well. So, Jarrod, thank you for coming on the podcast today to talk about your work.
Yeah, thanks for having me, mate.
Oh, you're very welcome. And maybe if you can give a little bit of background about yourself and how you got into this, this line of work.
Yeah, cool. So I've been doing personal training and breathwork coaching and some mindset coaching probably for the last sort of 3 to 4 years. How I got into it. So back in 2016, my dad called me into his office and he said, "Mate, come check out this documentary." And it was a documentary of Wim Hof. He was in the cold. He was climbing these mountains in like board shorts and bare feet with like a bunch of different people with chronic health conditions that are seemingly incurable. And we watched it for 40 minutes and pretty much with our jaws open in awe, basically. And through understanding Wim and understanding what he was taking people through, he was healing people, helping people heal themselves, I should say, through the cold, through breathing as modalities to heal themselves, basically. So from there, Dad and I basically every Sunday afternoon we go to the petrol station, buy 6 bags of ice, chuck it in the bathtub, do a couple minutes, and we just felt really good and charged up and probably had too much energy on a Sunday afternoon. But yeah, from there I just started talking to my friends about it, and they started coming over, and then we bought a chest freezer and I started running people through how to do it, how to breathe, how to get in, and learned so much along the journey of what not to do and what to do. And yeah, as a part of that, I joined a gym, and the gym ended up facilitating a lot of the things that I was passionate about. So Jimmy in the Gold Coast, basically the guy there was an awesome guy and just wanted me to feel passionate about the work I was doing. So started doing breathwork with people there. And then I connected with Breathless Expeditions, Breathwork Training Australia, run by Johannes, who has been a bit of a role model of mine prior to that point, because he was one of Wim's first instructors, and then he created his own organization in Australia in the Snowy Mountains and did the certification there, and have just been on a trip ever since, just loving it and love facilitating people through connecting to their own breathing.
So you mentioned breath work and then also like ice baths
Yeah.
um, as well. So you kind of we'll cover both of those. But are you like incorporating these things together then?
In some instances, yeah. So it depends on what the person's coming to me for. Often, often it will be for services around breathwork because usually the context that breathwork can be used in is quite varied. So how I'm using it currently is different to how I've been using it in the past. But currently, I've been using it in the context of helping people through things like overthinking, can't control their mind, racing thoughts, can't sleep, anxious states of being, sort of kind of overwhelming kind of states, and just sort of an overly sympathetic dominant kind of nervous system, you could say. So helping them retrain, bring them back into their parasympathetic nervous system, find balance, find harmony. And I've listened to your podcast, and you've talked about, the science of grounding, for example, as a good example there. And it's sort of our principles that are bringing people back to nature. And ice is also one of those things where the cold can be a very powerful modality to help people through a few different things. How I initially used it is how I don't really use it for the same reason now, but how I initially used it was, I had a breakup at the time where I was, in a relationship. There's nothing wrong with it. It was just a classic breakup where you're brokenhearted, you feel depressed, you lose part of yourself. It almost feels like you lose a part of you. So I used breath. That's how I got into it. I used the breathing and the cold baths to help reconnect back to myself, to re-energize my body, to feel good and just release those good endorphins that come with that. So people that ask me to do it now for them are usually, people within a gym context or in some sort of corporate place where they, want a bit of team bonding and they get to do a challenge together and they go into the cold. And it's not the easiest thing, but
No, I
it's
imagine it's not.
yeah.
Yeah. So you mentioned, you said a couple of things there. Sympathetic nervous system, parasympathetic nervous system. Yes, I mean I've spoke about grounding on the show before, and I'm huge fan of grounding. Maybe just for people that don't know, I think a lot of my listeners, a lot of my viewers will probably know what we're talking about, but just in case people don't, can you maybe explain a little bit about the difference between those two things, sympathetic nervous system, parasympathetic, and just for people that maybe don't know out there?
Yeah, so it's actually what I'm going to be talking about in Melbourne at the Lived Experiences Health and Healing weekend we have there. But yeah, so sympathetic dominant. So basically, in our autonomic nervous system, we have three types. We have sympathetic, parasympathetic, and then enteric. For the purpose of this, we mainly talk about the balance between sympathetic and parasympathetic. So overall, our sympathetic nervous system is that one where we're in that sort of fight or flight state. Now, I feel like the sympathetic nervous system gets a bit of a bad rap. For good reason, but we talk about it a lot, and for many of us, it is quite dominant, which just means that in our day to day, in our week to week, there's quite a lot of you could say stresses. So things that will bring in inflammation into our body. That can be from our thoughts and our thinking. That can be from somatic physical experiences that we have. That can be from physical injuries. That can be from the food that we're eating, from the health of our microbiome, the signals that we're sending back up to the brain. All these sorts of things can add to this sympathetic dominance. To give an idea of what it is, it's basically that sort of stress response. It's when we release those stress-related hormones such as cortisol and adrenaline. So, to give you a positive view of this, back in the day, maybe a long day ago, thousands of years ago, you're walking through, you're picking cherries off the trees, life's great. You see a tiger in the distance is a good example, and that tiger is a threat to your existence, a threat to your life, which means, okay, what are we going to do? Are we going to fight, or are we going to run, or are we going to flee? And what happens is the blood flow, your body sends all the blood flow out to your muscles. It over time switches off non-survival systems. Like you don't need an immune system in a moment of fight or flight. It's not required to survive. Translating that forward to today, what we have is quite a lot of sympathetic dominance within the context of how we live. Living itself has become quite a challenge, where a lot of people have an overregulated sympathetic nervous system. We don't have a lot of vagal tone. There's not a lot of rest and digest time that we give ourselves, and not a lot of grounding, and not a lot of space and creating just moments where there's no stimulus, it's just presence. And so so that's like the sympathetic, and that's going to switch off things like your immune system, your digestive system. It's going to send the blood flow out to the body because that's where the blood flow needs to be. Translating to the parasympathetic, this is what's known as our rest and digest. It's where when we're eating food, it's meant to be on. That's where we talk about things like vagus nerve. That's where we have vagus nerve stimulation. It's things like when we're feeling calm, when we're feeling relaxed, when we're feeling joyous. We need it to be turned on when we're sleeping, because you can't not be relaxed when you go to sleep. You have to allow your body the time and space to get to that point. So parasympathetic, rest and digest, it's sort of when the switch is off, when you're having that downtime, when you just grounded and centered, I guess. So part of bridging that sort of relationship with the breathing, or the breathing influences that system. So you could ask yourself right now, how am I breathing in this very moment? The way that we're breathing in this moment is going to stimulate either one of those, or sort of both of those at the same time to a certain degree of nervous system. So what we like to do is teach people how to activate their parasympathetic nervous system. Vagus nerve gets thrown around a lot, and for good reason, because we like to activate that vagus nerve through different breathing techniques. Activate our diaphragm, the pace of our breathing, the way we breathe, if we're mouth or nose breathing, all those sorts of things add to which dominance of nervous system we're going to have. So yeah.
Before we get into the episode though, guys, I just want to tell you about all the exciting things happening over at themeatmedic.com. I have relaunched the website, themeatmedic.com, with our brand new site and brand new community features, as well as new guides and new courses. Make sure you check out the website at themeatmedic.com and sign up free for our community. If you want to take your health to the next level though, we do have paid membership options available, with access to a private podcast with myself, exclusive live Q&A every single week. And if you really want to take it to the next level, you can sign up for our gold tier with free unlimited access to all courses and all products available on themeatmedic.com. Thank you guys, and we'll get back to the episode. Yeah, I think that's a really good kind of overview, top level overview really of the parasympathetic and sympathetic. So yeah, I mean, sympathetic, fight or flight, basically it's that real acute stress response. And exactly like you said, it is useful in those scenarios. You see the tiger and you're like, okay, I've got to do something about this. But yeah, it kind of just diverts all the blood flow away from the rest of the body, takes it to the muscles, pushes up our sugar levels, all of these things for that kind of explosive energy, an explosive response to do something. The problem is when that's just chronically activated, that's when we have an issue, and the body's not really designed for that to be on all the time. So what you're kind of saying there is with the appropriate breath work, you can help to kind of regulate that parasympathetic and sympathetic, nervous system, that fight or flight, and change that kind of from that, that to the rest and digest, where you're just relaxed, and we're kind of promoting blood flow to the gut, promoting blood flow to the brain, and just able to just, rest and digest. I think that's the best way of putting it. How much of this is a problem though, in terms of breathing? And there's going to be people out there thinking about this saying, okay, but I've got a crazy stressful life, like kids and work and, commuting and like Brisbane traffic. I mean, you live in Brisbane, you know what Brisbane traffic's
big time.
oh my God, it's getting terrible.
Yeah.
There's going to be people out there looking at this, watching this, listening to this saying, but how can I fix this with breathing?
Yeah, gotcha. So one thing is understanding the problem. So if there is a problem to address, great. Then there's a level of priority you're going to give to at least rebalancing your thoughts. So if there's no problem, then there's nothing that you need to change, right? So if your life's good, things are going great, the pace of your life's working well, health's kicking off, balance of food, family time, all those balancing aspects of life that you have, there's no problem, then there's no problem, then there's nothing you really need to change. So the only thing I would say that if there is an issue that you're trying to address, then breathing is at least something that you can use to help bring clarity to that situation. So for someone that's super busy, and let's say their problem is, look, I overthink and I've got a, corporate worker, family at home, there's no time for me, blah, blah, blah. understand that, because there's things that you are response able that you have to address in your life with your kids, family, work, etc. Right? So what we have is kind of two things here. We have what's called formal practice. So formal practice is where you dedicate time to it, and then an informal practice is where you bring awareness to your breath in the moment of doing what you're doing. So an informal practice is a nice, easy, gentle way for people that can't dedicate time, or don't have a coach nearby, or can't go to a place to go and recenter and rebalance through breath work. You have what's called informal practice, where we go into a situation where you just bring awareness to your breathing when you're doing what you're doing. And so I used to run an 8-week course, and I used to teach people about informal, formal. And by the end of it, people were saying, oh my God, I'm so aware of my breathing throughout the day. I can just sort of turn it on when I'm feeling anxious or stressed. And it just helps me rebalance my thoughts and how I feel, right? And so informal, what it is, you want to bring awareness to your breathing and doing what you're doing. A great way to do that is when you're driving. Slow your breathing down. How often at the end of a day is everyone in a rush? Everyone's frantic, and someone cuts you off, and you're just waiting for the cap to bottle because of the stress of the day. And that person doesn't give a shit. They're often gone. Like, you're the one that has to deal with this emotion. And
It's
so,
true.
you know what I mean? So, how good would it be if you came home and your partner said to you, God, you're really calm and collected and put together recently. What are you doing? Like and it's a good thing, because then your partner is going to feel more trust. Is also going to feel relaxed because you're relaxed. The kids that you have are feeling your energy. You're going to feel more harmony with them. They're not going to be as, have those drastic outbursts of behavior if they're feeling your stress, because we know kids take on the energy of the parents. It's no,
Mm.
it's not a, you know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
all know that's true. I mean, we certainly see this. I mean, I've got 4 kids, and we see it commonly. Like birth coaches, doulas, midwives, etc. They talk to pregnant mums to be about like your partner, and all about nesting and setting up the environment for conducive kind of labor and so on. But one of the big things they really talk about is your partner basically just being really just low stress and just relaxed and calm, and that really translates to the mum as well, because that is it's contagious, and if the person comes home just like super stressed and they're freaking out, so on, it makes the woman really stressed as well. So there's definitely that kind of transference. I think it works both ways. um I've noticed that you are taking some very deep breaths through your nose while we're kind of talking about this, and I don't know if you can hear, I'm kind of breathing through my mouth, which is really not good. Maybe that's a good segue into talking about mouth breathing versus nose breathing, and how that actually can make a difference. And I guess that goes into the informal, being conscious of how you're breathing as well.
Way to open a can of worms there, Dr. Suresh. Yeah, so you'll see, what you're addressing here is my breathing. So for those that can't see me, what I'm doing is, while I'm listening to Dr. Suresh, I'm just breathing for roughly 5 seconds in and then 5 seconds out. That's a technique called coherent breathing, or heart coherence. And it's a great technique to help find balance. And one of those things that we've been talking about, activating parasympathetic nervous system. Well, coherent breathing is just a really nice balancing tool. 5 seconds in, 5 seconds out. No need to pause. That's the one I use when I drive. That's the one when I, if I'm observing something, or if I'm observing a client and I'm just looking at their technique on how they're moving or whatever they're doing. It's a great way to bring awareness to your thoughts. Is this a positive thought? Is this a negative thought? And just bring that awareness. So, yeah, great observation there. Now, to address your question around nose breathing versus mouth breathing, I'll talk about mouth breathing, and I'll identify the issues with that as simply as I can. Mouth breathing. Okay. First things first, let's think about the function of a mouth. What do we do with our mouth? Well, we have a tongue and we have teeth. So we start the digestive process. We break down food. That's its purpose. When we look at the function of a nose, it is an airway canal. It has hairs to clean the air. It has canals deep within here to slow the air down. That actually warms the air up in preparation for gas exchange down at the side of the alveoli and our lungs. We need humidified air, we don't want to dry out the lungs because they are a moist environment. So a good test you can do to really feel this is, if you can, if you're driving, please don't do this, but if your hands are free and you're in a safe environment, bring your hand up almost so that it's touching your face. You take a deep breath in through your nose and breathe out through your mouth. And you can kind of feel the warmth that comes out of the mouth. And so what that is that is warm, humidified air. Now, the problem that we have is when we mouth breathe, we do not warm, we do not clean, and we do not humidify the air when it comes into our lungs. So if you were to take one breath through your mouth now to feel this, take a breath through your mouth, let it go. Immediately when you breathe through your mouth, you can feel a slight dryness on your lips. You can feel the cool air coming in through your mouth. And already my mouth is starting to bring more saliva. So what happens when you
Yeah,
breathe
definitely.
through? You feel that, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So what happens is at the side of the lungs, when that gets dry, well, we produce mucus, because mucus is a way to bring that moisture back. But the problem that we have is when we produce mucus in our airways are, say, this large, not to ratio, but as a sort of representation. When we produce mucus, the amount of airflow, how do I get that? There we go. The amount of airflow reduces. And so it's sort of a sort of vicious circle where you breathe through your mouth, you dry your airway, you produce mucus, you feel short of air, you keep breathing through your mouth because you think you need more air. The trick, breathe through your nose, slow your breathing down, take a nice deep breath in. And so there's a lot more that goes with mouth breathing. So a good example, let's go back to the tiger. A tiger is a great place to start with this. So let's say you're walking through jungle, you're picking the cherries. Like before you see the tiger, immediately the reaction with that is so there's this sort of panic that can sort of overwhelm you, right? So what happens is when we're mouth breathing, unintentionally, we're activating the same sympathetic response in your nervous system, bringing on that fight or flight system. So people that are chronic mouth breathers, well, often you'll see they are chronically not sleeping because there's not a lot of balancing going on in the evening. They're stressed throughout the day. They're, usually if they're doing this throughout their childhood, throughout those sort of developmental stages, sort of that sort of 7 to 14 kind of range, their face structure even changes. A good one with sleep, if your mouth, and a lot of people are mouth breathing when they're sleeping. So if you're mouth breathing when you're sleeping, well, you want to get some sort of device. Mouth tape's a good one. You want to avoid, well, I'll be careful with this. You don't necessarily want to avoid a sleep apnea machine. Sleep apnea machine is something you can use, but the goal is actually to close the mouth. The goal is actually to get the mouth shut throughout the day so that throughout the night, you can close the mouth throughout the night. Problem when you're mouth breathing throughout the night is the upper airway, the musculature in there switches off. So your airway can collapse, causing you to stop breathing. Then you breathe and you wake. And that's what sort of creates that cycle of that sort of restlessness. You get to sleep and you wake up all the time throughout the night. If you breathe through your nose, your airway typically will stay open, or you train it to over a period of time. And so, you think about the sort of downstream effect of, okay, we're stressed because we're mouth breathing. We're not sleeping because we're mouth breathing. Well, then we've got very depleted energy. We also lose up to 40% of the oxygen in our body when we mouth breathe because we don't retain the oxygen. We're depleting our body of our oxygen. We're, sympathetically dominant. We're stressed. We're not sleeping. We're not having that rejuvenation, that restoration, and sort of that sort of vicious spiral downwards.
Yeah, I mean, I mouth breathe. I try not to. I try work very hard to not do that. As I say, breathing in through my mouth. But it makes a big difference. It really did make a big difference when I started myself personally to try and purposefully breathe through my mouth. And when I catch myself breathing breathing through my nose, when I catch myself breathing through my mouth, I really, make sure I'm breathing through my nose. But I used to breathe through my mouth at nighttime. And I don't have sleep apnea, as far as I'm aware, but I definitely mouth breathe at night, and it's horrible. You wake up stressed. Your mouth is just dry and horrible. You have a horrible night's sleep. The first time that I tried mouth taping was really weird. I always thought like maybe I should just like tape my mouth shut overnight. And I used to joke about it. I never knew it was a thing. I genuinely never knew it was actually a thing until I saw it. I think it was like Ali Abdal or something on YouTube. And I just is the thumbnail was just him with like a piece of tape across his mouth. And it was just I tried taping my mouth. And I was like, oh, like maybe that's a thing then. Like
Yeah,
I
wow,
didn't,
you're on
you know,
a long time ago.
and then it was just amazing. Like
Mm,
my kind of quote unquote sleep apnea was just snoring, waking up all through the night, and like needing to just drink through the night, needing to
mm,
pee as well. It's weird. You
yeah,
breathe through your mouth, it makes you need to pee. It must be
yeah,
something with
the
the
common one.
hormonal changes. Yeah, I don't know exactly what the mechanism is there, but it definitely happens.
Yeah, I'm not sure of the exact mechanism, but it's definitely,
Mm,
especially in kids as well. Like you'll see what typically happens, especially in really young infants, if they're breathing through their mouth throughout their night, often they'll be actually wetting the bed throughout the night because they don't have that sort of behavioral pattern downloaded, basically, where, okay, I need to go to the toilet, I need to walk to the toilet, take a piss or whatever it is, come back, go to sleep, sort of thing. It's sort of they're still learning that. So often
mm,
you'll see really young kids, if they're mouth breathing, they'll be there's increased urination. You'll start
mm.
wetting the bed is a good sign to look out for if you're unsure with your young one.
Yeah, it definitely is, and I've spoken to patients about this. I do, some very basic breath work with them, and yeah, mouth taping, and they often report they just wake up less times, in the night to pee, which is really big deal because then if you're not waking up, you're getting better sleep. Oh, I think I've lost you, Jarrod. Um, you've disappeared off my screen. I don't know what's going on here. Okay, hopefully we can get Jarrod back. He seems to have disappeared. There
Sorry,
we
I'm
go. We've
back. Can
got
you
you
hear me?
back. I can hear you. Yes. You
Sorry, your
disappeared
audio went off on
briefly.
my end.
Don't worry. No, we've got you back. We've got you back. That's all right. Um, I can see you. I don't, yep, you're blinking. You're not frozen.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear
I
me?
can't hear you on my end for some
Oh,
reason.
okay. Okay. I don't know. Can you hear me
I
now?
can. Sorry, I got a call from my mother.
Okay. You can hear me now?
I can hear you now. We're all good.
Okay, I removed myself and put myself back in. It seems to have fixed it, so that's good. All right. Well, we lost you for a brief moment there, but we were basically talking about like taping mouth overnight and needing to pee less and so on. And yeah, it made a huge difference. It took a little bit of getting used to taping my mouth, but um, pretty quickly, a couple of days, it was like just second nature, and yeah, it made a huge difference. One thing that I managed to do, which I didn't really ever think would be possible, would be to kind of train myself to actually use my nose overnight. I'm not
Mm,
perfect with it still, but I don't really need to tape my mouth anymore.
mm,
And because there's going to be people listening to this, watching this, thinking, yeah, but I can't train myself when I'm sleeping because I'm unconscious and you can't
no.
control it. But I mean, presumably you found also that people can actually train to just subconsciously, unconsciously start to use their nose rather than their mouth as well.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. It's sort of, I guess, thinking about the law of facilitation, so, the decision you make once is not a very strong connection we make in the brain. But, after a while of time, if we keep making that connection, keep making that connection, keep making that connection, often, you can create new habits over the space of 30 days because your neural networks have started, this is a strong connection here. We know how to make this decision. We're comfortable with this decision. We know how it works. We know what to do. It's sort of, your body gets used to it, right? Um, what I've seen is, I used to have, I remember this lady, great story. So, she was, used to run a breathwork class at the previous place of work. And, they come they come once a week. So they would only do half an hour breath work, max once a week. And all we do is we do functional breathing exercises. We do a little bit of the sort of activated stuff where we go into deeper brainwave states. But for the most part, it was just about health and well-being and restoring sleep and, just bringing balance to the nervous system. So doing half an hour of breath work with her. And after about a 3-month period of just coming once a week for half an hour, this lady, prior to that, she had about an average of 3 to 4 hours of sleep per night on average. So she was always exhausted, always really tired. And I remember the first day she came to me, that she said that she goes, "Wow, Jarrod, I had 6 hours of sleep last night."
Oh wow.
And it was amazing because I said, well, what things have you noticed? She goes, well, my mouth's not dry anymore, which just is an indication that, if your mouth breathing in the night, an indication to determine that is in the morning. Well, the mouth is sort of dry, like you've sort of said before, and you need to keep drinking water because it sort of loses the moisture. Plus, you're probably feeling dehydrated, so you want to drink water anyway. And so, so over a period of time now, it does depend. It does take your nervous system a little bit of time to get used to it. I've got my dad who has been on a sleep apnea machine for 3 years, and he came to me the other night and he said, look, I just kept my mouth shut and I actually had a better sleep than with the machine. And it's not to say that the machine is a bad thing, because the machine was helping him sleep. But once he learnt to shut his mouth, then he was having a very good night's sleep. So it is possible to do it without the tape. I personally have used the tape once or twice. Basically, when I started doing the course, I just told myself we are going to be just up to scratch on this sort of nasal breathing stuff. So pretty much most of the time throughout the day, like I was being a breathwork, you're thinking about breathing so much. You're talking about breathing. You're thinking about it a lot. So over a period of time, you can get to it without mouth tape, without any equipment needed while you're sleeping. But the thing is, your body is going to breathe at night how you are breathing during the day on average. So like if you decided, okay, I'm a mouth breather, I haven't done any training, I'm just going to nasal breathe all day. Will I sleep with my mouth open? The likelihood is very high because it's only been a day. Give it 1 month, 2 months of, just bringing awareness to, okay, close the mouth, breathe through the nose, slow it down, nice deep breaths. Then over time you can get to that point. But mouth breathing is a thing. Mouth taping is a thing where it can be quite confronting to begin with, especially if you've never done it. The first couple nights can be sort of, shit, this is, is this safe kind of thing? Is the sort of thing we think about. Like, should this actually be closed? And the answer is, well, it should be closed naturally. So the answer is yes.
It does feel weird, and I do warn my patients, and especially no one's said yes, but I always ask about any kind of facial trauma or anything that because it could trigger things there. But that is a big jug of water you've got.
It is ginormous. It is a 4-liter bottle of water that
is huge.
I'm never dehydrated. There was one day at work I forgot this. I was dehydrated.
Yeah, that's huge. But it is a little bit confronting because it feels like somebody's just kind of closing your mouth, and especially if you are a mouth breather, then it feels weird to have your mouth kind of forcibly kind of closed. But I mean, I just use like some surgical tape. You can buy it off Amazon or pharmacies for like a couple of dollars, and it works really well. It doesn't. You've got a little bit more facial hair than I do now. Your beard's coming in nice and strong. My beard's a bit useless, so I just kind of trim mine. It just goes like really ginger, and it's just kind of annoying. So, but I try and grow it out every once in a while. But anyway, we're getting off topic.
You got to keep at it. You got to keep at it.
Yeah, I see these guys with like big beards, and I'm like, how do you get your beard so good? We could do a whole episode on beards, and they're just like, you've just got to keep going. You've just got to keep going.
You got to keep at it. That's it.
And I'm like, yeah, but it just gets like really ginger and doesn't really look that great. So anyway, but it doesn't like pull off my facial hair, anything like that. So people think they're gonna like wax. Don't use like duct tape or something. Obviously, use like surgical tape or something. It's designed to kind of go on the skin.
Yeah, like you said, surgical tape can be a great option. Another good option I've seen is the other certification I've done is through Oxygen Advantage. The guy that leads that is Patrick McCowan. Fantastic breathing course if you ever want to become a breathwork practitioner in the functional aspect. So in terms of performance, in terms of general health and well-being, the sort of topics we've been talking about. I know from my talk, I think Dr. Ivy Charlton was quite inspired, and she's done her breathing.
She has, and she's going to be coming on the show soon, actually, and she's speaking at Tracy McBeath's lived experiences workshop as well. So then she's going to be coming on the show soon to talk about her journey into breath work and and so on as well. So I think there's loads of benefits. I mean, I remember seeing a patient not too long ago who was just crazy stressed, depression, anxiety, on all sorts of medications, and no medications had really ever really worked that well for her. And she had ADHD and all sorts of other issues, kind of going on. And in our this is when I was doing some kind of counseling, with her, and we spent about 45, maybe 50 minutes session going through lots of, because, psychological stuff, strategies, CBT, and so on to help her. And then at the end, I said, right, let's just do like, a couple of minutes of breathing. And I just kind of got her to sit there and just do, it wasn't even like box breathing, or we can talk about box breathing. It was just simply, like kind of 5 seconds in, 5 seconds out, just super, super easy. And she kind of just went from like this, almost like just, gripping the kind of chair, like, white knuckling almost the whole time, because she was so kind of just stressed. She literally she closed her eyes, and over the course of about a minute of breathing, she kind of just, no one can, people in podcasts can't see me, but on YouTube, she kind of just like melted into the chair. I'm trying to talk into my mic while I'm melting into the chair. She kind of just like melted into the chair, and like everything just like went like just so relaxed. And she just virtually fell asleep, and she just could not sleep. This lady could not sleep at all. And that was one of her really big problems. And then she basically just pretty much fell asleep almost in the consultation. Really and she just felt so good from just that breathing exercise. And she just kind of took that away and was like, the other 55 minutes, she was like, okay, that was helpful, but like the breathing is the thing I'm taking away from this. and she was like, well, it was worth it to get to this point. And then that just transformed her sleep into just, it was incredible after that. So yeah, breathing is so incredibly powerful.
Oh, absolutely. Were you going to say something?
Yeah, I was going to ask, I mean, how do people kind of, what's some basic ways of getting into, breath work? Just some basic tips for people.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing I'll note is, if you've never done it and you start, what your client experiences is very similar to what can happen. So when you do start, it's very often you can fall asleep straight away, or like within a few minutes. And if it doesn't happen, that's okay. Like, don't feel like something's wrong, but it is possible for you to, after, a couple of minutes of breath work, if you've never done it, if it is a relaxing kind of parasympathetic, dominant kind of breath work, then it's possible for you to fall asleep. The reason is because it's one of the first times during the day where you've allowed your body to rest in God knows how long. For some people, it's 50 years. For some, it's 20. It's all different depending on, where you're at with understanding this sort of, having quiet time for you kind of thing. But a good place for people to start is dedicating time, is, if you can, and it doesn't have to be a lot of time. I would say the first thing is dedicating time. This can be with your partner, this can be with your kids too, and you can guide them through, because one of the best things you can do, for your kids, is help them to regulate their own emotions. And breathing is the first point to bring us into a calmer state, where we can be rational, where we can be logical, where we don't blow up, where we can understand potentially the emotions that are going on, where we can better communicate, where we can be more understanding and compassionate, and just have more, come from our heart more, like connect to the other person. So I would say be dedicating time. If you live by yourself, do it by yourself. If you live with people, maybe, invite them, say, hey, look, I want to try this thing, breathing. I think it's going to help us, help me, maybe help you be calmer and just sort of a bit more, relaxed, and, love to try it. So, dedicating time together. One thing you can do is just put on some nice meditation music. That can in itself can be an exploratory kind of thing. Depending on your mood, will depend on what kind of tunes you like. Some people like, streams of the ocean, streams of nature. Some people like to put on sort of, what are those sort of binaural beats and those sorts of things. Some people like white noise. It's whatever your preference is, right? And all you need to do is, you want to lie down, and you just want to breathe in for 5 seconds and then out for 5 seconds. And then after a while, stop counting, in for 5 and out for 5, and just breathe in with feeling. So your body will start to understand what it feels like to breathe in for 5 and then out for 5. So start with the counting. After you progress from there, stop counting, but just keep that rhythm going and just breathe for 5-10 minutes. And often you may even fall asleep, who knows? But it's just going to help start that process, bridge that process. If you're someone that needs a bit more extensive help, so, for example, one of the things I worked on this year, I had a lady come in, she was doing a bit of work with another personal trainer, and this personal trainer and her identified that in her nervous system, there's quite a bit of panic, when they were driving, if they didn't know where they were driving, they didn't know where they were parking, they would sort of have these sort of episodes where they needed to run to the bathroom, and pretty immediately, like, it was just this real urgent panic. and it was very hard for them to control it. So what we did over the course of a month or two is work on rebalancing our nervous system, and the goal was because they were going overseas. They didn't want to be going to places they didn't know, having to just run to the bathroom, not having access to one. And so what we did in leading up to that, we made it a goal that she would not need to go when they were going overseas, and basically not experience this panic that she was. So we did a lot more in-depth kind of work, and we sat together, and there was a bit of talk therapy and breathing practices, and choosing the specific ones that are just going to give her the right amount of balancing. And so we did that, and she had a great time. They went overseas, had a great time with the family. And since that time, which has been sort of 3-4 months ago, there hasn't been any panic that's come back. And look, she hasn't kept up with her practice that much. It can come back over a period of time, but I think because the work was so comprehensive, she's been able to sort of give herself, who knows how much time, but give herself more than how often she was doing it. I always say, if you can, allow it to become a practice that becomes one of your habits. So allow it to be something you do in your week or your day. What do I do? Well, I have an informal practice. So anytime I remember to breathe, I'll take nice, slow, deep, controlled breaths. I'll dedicate nearly every day a bit of a morning practice for 5 minutes. I'll just do some activating breaths. That just energizes me, gets me in the right headspace to go about my day and go about my busy day. And then, throughout the day, if I've got any downtime, I'll drop in for sort of maybe 20-minute breath work, where I take myself through quite a few different techniques. Depending on where I'm at, if I need to, write a guided meditation, or if I'm about to go into a journey with someone that's a little bit more deep and sort of the breath work that we haven't really talked about today, but is more so going down that sort of changing brainwave a little bit more, tapping into the unseen world and sort of the world that sort of we can't necessarily see in our tangible understanding, but we connect and sort of connecting to a higher place, if you sort of catch my drift. Mm-hmm. So I'll sort of like to drop in more deeply myself there, and then that can be 20-30 minutes. And then once a month, I try and go a good hour, good 45-minute, just a nice, full, deep reset breath work that I just take myself through. So, yeah.
I mean, what amazing story. Because, especially obviously being a doctor, we kind of live in this medical model really where everything just requires medications, and she would, if she went to see someone, she'd be diagnosed, pretty much with IBS, anxiety, take some antidepressants, sertraline, SSRI medications, maybe TCAs perhaps. That's not working. Okay, go see a gastroenterologist, whatever, go get a colonoscopy, all this kind of stuff. And she pretty much just fixed it with breathing, because the issue was not actually really a kind of a physical medical issue. It was just kind of anxiety and stress with panic, I suppose.
And it's not to say that I think one thing as a breathwork coach that you can sort of get, that we sort of learn, is the effects, the widespread effect that breathing can have on the entire body. So it's very easy as a breathwork coach, as you just finish a course, this was a few years ago, for me to think that breathwork is the answer to everything.
It's always the way. Yeah.
Thank God, you got inflammation, you need breathwork. You need increased performance, you need breathwork. You're going to climb Mount Everest, you need breath. Like it's applicable everywhere, but it's not necessarily the only thing, if you catch my drift. But it's definitely a great form, a great practice to have, that if you do want to reduce inflammation, well, it can help. If you do want to improve sleep, it can help. If you do want to climb Mount Everest, then it can help. Like it's very adaptable. But yeah, just thought I'd touch on that.
Yeah, I think we all kind of do that. We start off very, very broad. There's all these things that can help, and then when we learn something that seems to make a difference to people, it kind of just like, we all just kind of go to this super narrow, right? This is the one thing that you just need to do, and everything will be fine. And then we learn actually to expand a little bit more again and say, okay, well, actually, there's lots of things that could help. It's all pieces of the puzzle. So, but breath work, I think, is really, really important. What else, just, touch on quickly before we finish about, what else are you kind of working on then with this holistic life coaching? Because you're quite excited about this kind of future work that you're looking into.
Oh, absolutely. So, Yeah, so one of the things I've noticed being strength and conditioning coach, personal trainer, breathwork coach now, I'm able to work on people and help people, grow their physical body, find, develop their physical attributes that they want to, whether that's a functional performance work or whether that's just more body image. And then, I can work on the mindset stuff, and we can go into the nervous system, and we can work on understanding emotion and understanding triggers, and done a whole bunch of training on how to process different emotions and what they mean and the source of where they come from, and helping sort of like bridge the mind and the body, if that makes sense. The thing I've noticed though is currently I'm not able to help people in a very holistic way where I can sort of, okay, let's recommend, if just for someone that just needs a bit of guidance, bit of general well-being, I'm not able to help them with, excuse me, not able to help them with food choices and those sorts of things. And food's one of those ones that I'm really passionate about, because I've been going to these low carb down unders and keto conferences since I was 14. My mum just started taking me, and that's where I first met Luke Hines and Pete Evans and Dr. Fung and Dr. Fung, sorry, my apologies, and yourself, just like, one of the first guys, you remember him from our last event together.
Jedi?
No.
Not Jedi.
The engineer.
Oh, Marty Kendall.
Marty Kendall. Yeah.
Yeah. Who has been on the show recently? Yeah.
Yeah, and just being immersed in ketogenic lifestyle and understanding, what the cereal wave did to people and the low fat, did, and what the, big pharma's doing with food and what Bill Gates is doing now with apple cider. It's just like, I can see it all, but when it comes to the recommendations and applicability to then clients, I'm not there yet, but I'd love to be. So this is a point at least to, and this is run by Paul Chek, who's just a man that I really look up to, and it takes a very holistic approach. So we're looking at, the understanding of food and food sources and where they come from and soil quality. We're also looking at energy, like, just to touch on this, one thing that I found really interesting is his 1, 2, 3, 4 approach. Now, this is, the course I'm doing is for me to go through for myself, and then the next one is when I can learn how to and support and patients and clients through that. So 1, 2, 3, 4 approach, nice and quick. Number one is, what is your one love? What is your one thing? What is the big thing you're here for? And we go deep into that. Number two is we have two energies to balance. We have the yin and the yang energy. Everything in life in this 3D world is of polarity, right? So we have the good and the bad, the evil, the light and the dark. We have the yin and the yang. We have the feminine and the masculine, and we have, mixtures of all that. So within each of us, there's this sort of force of yang, this sort of going and do, the action taking, the movement, the will, the direction, the structure, the whatever. Then we have the yin, which is part of that feminine energy. That's the stillness. That's the presence. That's a bit of the chaos. That's a bit of that sort of emotional feeling. That's part of slowing down, being still, sort of, and there's this balance that we play within ourselves of this yin and the yang. So understanding your balance of yin and yang, number two. Number three, well, we have three choices that we can make through the use of free will. So first choice is a life affirmative choice. It benefits you and everyone around you. So this is a choice that is, that comes from the heart. This is a choice that benefits you. This is a choice that you consider others, you're understanding, you're compassionate. It comes from joy. It comes from a very light and loving place. The second choice is more of a, you could almost say self-destructive choice, where it's sort of more instant gratification. It's more only serves you. It's considered more of a selfish decision where, like, it's at the detriment of others. And then we have the third choice we can make, which is no choice. So that's apathy, that's sort of numbness, that's sort of no choice being made, that's sort of taking a back seat. And so that's step three. And then the four is our four doctors. And I would love to present on this one day, because the four doctors is such a powerful thing that gives people a full picture into sort of how can you do things to support your health. That's not just breathing, that's not just exercise, that's not just food and nutrition, it's sort of packed all together. So the four doctors, we have Dr. Happiness, Dr. Nutrition, Dr. Quiet, and Dr. Movement. And within those, they have yin and yang aspects. And so we want to basically, and there's a bunch of things in that we answer for ourselves, like how much quiet time am I getting each night? For optimal health, how much percent of the time do I want to be eating organic food? How much exercise do I want to be doing each day? How many days a week do I want to be doing that? And then you sort of structure it out for yourself, and you get this full sort of map, and it's just awesome. So yeah, what I'd like to do is eventually be able to legally, and also from a pure passion point of view, be able to support people in a more holistic way, as well as the physical and the mental, and then the emotional, and then the good stuff, the nutrition, all that sort of stuff that goes with it. So
Yeah, I mean, it's all incredibly powerful. It's all incredibly important. And yeah, I mean, life coaching certainly. I mean, I think as a as a GP, that's honestly a lot of what we do. Is just life coaching. I mean, obviously, yeah, there's the prescription pad and so on, but for anyone that's not just trying to dole out medications all the time, a lot of what we deal with, yeah, is really just life coaching, but we don't get any training in it. That's the
yeah,
crazy thing.
oh,
We're
it's
doing
great.
all this work, but like we never really get any training, and we hopefully we do it pretty well. I mean, a lot of life experience and dealing with all these issues, you do get kind of fairly good at, I think, at recognizing and dealing with things. But yeah, I think I wish more GPs would do this kind of work as well, and training. I think it should be pretty mandatory, part of, I think, being a doctor, to be perfectly honest. But I'm not in charge of the training program, so
Well, I guess it's kind of like when you're in the university or whatever it is, it's sort of when you get to the end of it, you sort of have to think, well, what is the intention? So like for just a super standard GP that just, graduates uni, and correct me if I'm wrong, right? So graduate uni as a licensed GP now, can then practice, can then prescribe medications to people. And then obviously, can diagnose some things, but often will refer on if the specialist is required, right? So you sort of mentioned in there that there's no nutrition training. Is that what you said? There's no there's no life coaching. There's no sort of
no, I mean,
holistic.
like, it's been a while since I've been at medical school now, but 20 odd years. But, my understanding is still nutrition training is basically non-existent, kind of life coaching training, how to kind of just, deal with things pretty
Mm,
much is non-existent. We're taught a lot about how to diagnose, and we're
mm,
taught how to put a label on something, and the right label. And that is very important, of course. And we're taught how to prescribe, but that's pretty much all it is. Everything else you kind of learn as you go along, and you hope that you have good teachers and good trainers and things you pick up from people, but they're not really. I mean, certainly when I was at medical school, my GP training and so on, they're not really any real part, formal kind of part of training. It's just something you're kind of expected to just be able to do, but with no real training, I mean, you don't know if you're doing it right or not.
mm.
At the end of the day, you hope you are, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, it's just so refreshing, in my opinion, to see GPs like you that go and do the professional development and take the extra mile to look at things from a holistic viewpoint. Because if you don't, what we have is basically a system that's filled with people that are legal drug dealers that know what to diagnose you, that potentially have the right diagnosis. But here is something that is going to treat whatever symptom that you're experiencing. And if there's no plan to go, okay, how can we make you non-dependent on this if possible? How can we create habits? How can we do things from a lifestyle perspective that at the end of the day, you're going to have a thriving health, that you're going to feel amazing, that you won't need to come back and see me. You won't
Mm.
need to get another prescription. We want you thriving and living the best full life that you can. Wouldn't that be just a fantastic thing that I think I'm seeing more and more GPs like
It would
yourself do,
be.
you know?
Yeah, I
So,
mean, we are seeing there is a slow, I think, progression towards that. And we're getting slightly off topic, but it's an important topic to talk about. We are seeing, I think, a slow progression towards that. It's difficult because, when you're in these circles, you're going to see the same kind of people that are trying to do this kind of work. But yeah, I mean, you're right. The problem is that, the system is just perverse. The system is set up to have those repeat customers,
mm,
for life. There's a popular meme, a patient cured, day one of medical school, a patient cured is a patient lost,
mm,
which sadly is kind of true, to some extent. And you may say, legalized drug dealer. I often joke to patients, if I wanted to just be a drug dealer, like I would have just been a drug dealer. And I don't, condone dealing drugs and taking, drugs, of course. But, you know, and I often joke I'd probably make more money and get into less trouble. But which is probably true, you know, to be honest. So I'd probably, yeah, but you know, I don't think that's the way that our job should be. Our job should be to make people better, and in whatever way, you know, we can. And medications, I said this to someone today, you know, medications they're a tool to be utilized like any other tool, like breath work, like sleeping. You know, all of these tools can be utilized for someone, and it's the right tool for the right patient at the right time, you know, for the right problem. And medications do form part of that. But I think the ultimate goal should always be to get off them,
Oh, yeah.
not to just, you know, stay on them. But we have this perverse incentive, especially here in Australia, with this fee for service, you know, kind of model, which on the whole does work fairly well. The incentive is kind of to keep the patient coming back, which kind of means by definition, you know, you're not really incentivized to actually make them better. Now, most people are, you know, genuinely, I think, trying their best. Most doctors don't try to keep the patient coming back ultimately, but there's just that lack of kind of incentive to really go the extra mile.
Yeah.
And there are people like me, but yeah, it's my business model is pretty terrible. It's like, you know, trying to just cure people so they don't have to come back. It's like I'm just losing money. You know, it doesn't make any sense to do that. But my business model is essentially, well, if I do a good job, you know, with someone, there'll always be something that comes up. You know, there always is, and so they'll come back if they like me, they'll like my approach. But then they'll go and tell the next person, the next person, the next person, and you know, and so on. So then it's a slow build up, you know, but then it gets there, and then you're just rolling with it. So, but no, I think that, you know, I think that's what our job should be. But we're getting slightly off topic.
Well, I was going to address that. I think on that note, if I may, I think as much as it is a little bit off topic, I think it's really important because when I was, you know, 16, 17, and I was going to these keto events, this sort of thing they started to sort of talk about, and they started to sort of look at lifestyle factors and how we eat food and the source where's the food coming from? Is it full of pesticides? Is it full of fungicides? Is it full of crap shit? Is the soil depleted? Like all those things, these events started to host, and then they started talking about, well, how does the pharmaceutical industry facilitate this, right? And so my passion started with looking at, well, GPs don't get you healthy. Normal ones. Not like you. You're not normal.
Well, I mean, they try. I think they try.
Yeah.
Let's
They do their
be
best
fair.
with
Yeah.
the knowledge they're given, and it's not a discredit them, and it's not a shit on them situation. It's just a matter of, you know, they're doing the best with the knowledge they've been given. You know, they probably started out wanting to help people feel better. Like that's what it's pitched as. And
Yeah,
in
always.
school,
Yeah.
one of the most admirable things you can go and study, right? So it's sort of, we need a, you know, I don't know the solution to that one, but I think seeing how it's sort of deep-rooted systematic approach was just based around, well, we do need repeat customers, and we do need to keep prescribing these things in order to facilitate these jobs that we have created through this system, sort of thing. And sort of seeing that just didn't sit right with me, and so that's what's fueled this sort of fire to help people from that sort of holistic perspective, much like yourself, but just through different means and through different modalities, you could say.
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone in this kind of space has that personal journey or knows someone, you know, somewhat personal journey, friends, family, or themselves, you know, some sort of health issue, or yeah, they've just kind of seen the light, they've just seen the system for what it is, and you know, kind of woken up. And I think this maybe is what creates a lot of I don't really like the term, but burnout in the medical profession, especially in general practice. I see it a lot of people on, you know, various Facebook groups and stuff I'm part of, you know, always kind of talking about how they just, you know, want to quit general practice and get out because they can't, they just feel like they can't help people, you know, the system's kind of got them trapped and so on. Which is a real shame, you know, and they don't know how to turn, they don't know where to turn, they don't know how to kind of help the patients without just putting them onto more, you know, more and more medications, you know, and all these things. And I see a lot of doctors actually becoming life coaches and just, or health coaches, just getting out of that kind of space and into that kind of just holistic lifestyle space. Because they also feel, a lot of people feel like they just, you know, they're hemmed in, like they're too controlled as a doctor. And I had Dr. Asuji on the show, episode 8 or 10, 15, something like quite early on in the show, Dr. Adori. And she was basically talking about this, saying effectively she stopped being a doctor and became essentially a health coach because she just felt so constrained, by the system as a doctor. And she just felt so much freer being a health coach. And she just doesn't prescribe medications anymore. And I've spoken to a number of dietitians, not on this show, just privately, who have said similar things about giving up, dietetics and becoming nutritionists instead, which are just less kind of regulated, because Dietitians Australia is pretty damn heavy-handed in terms of their regulation.
Yeah.
And only until recently have they started, kind of encouraging, or at least acknowledging and recognizing like low carbohydrate diets for treatment for diabetes, for example, and partnering with Defeat Diabetes, and with Peter Bruckner. But that's only recently, and it wasn't that long ago. They were still promoting, Coke and telling the dietitians, you have to tell people that Coke is good for you, because essentially they paid us to it's like, it's shocking. And so some dietitians, they just give up and say, look, I can't do the work that I want to do being a registered dietitian. So I'll give that up, call myself a nutritionist, register with APRA as a nutritionist, rather than Dietetics Australia as a dietitian. And I can do exactly the same work. I can just do what I want to do and be a lot freer to just give proper advice that actually works, So it's not just doctors, I think a lot of people do kind of have this issue, but I don't know what the solution is, because it's just the system,
You know what it is? Now, this is a big stab in the dark here, but it is doing exactly what we're doing. It is, we know that, okay, to a certain degree, we can't impact change from us if we kind of go top down, but bottom up, if we have people that are going, this isn't working, this sucks, I'm going to change, I'm too constrained, I'm going to do it my way. And now we have all these people like yourself, like these doctors you're talking about, people in different industry, people doing things differently, where they're working outside of these sort of constraints and bounds that don't facilitate the thriving of the human body and human heart, right? So I think it's just doing what we're doing. I think we just keep hammering home what we're doing, where we become the dominant, like it's the scales are tipping very progressively, if you know what I mean.
I think they are.
You know what I mean? I think it's just we just got to keep standing for what we believe in, and we keep practicing the way that we want to practice, and obviously, scientifically backed and supported by research, and not just taking weird stabs in the dark with health. And we got people's health on the line, but doing it from a place where the thing isn't the priority. It's the person sitting in front of me that's the priority.
Yeah, I agree. I think the best thing really is a kind of a bottom up approach rather than a top down. Realistically, no one's ever really going to change guidelines and stuff until more and more people start doing this kind of, functional, holistic lifestyle work, thinking slightly outside the box. And then getting people those results, like you said, with your lady, that went abroad. I mean, like that, hopefully someone, like her GP, whatever, that she's probably been going to for a while, I imagine, saying this is a problem. Hopefully they would see that and say, wow, like, what is this change? This is incredible. But sadly, that isn't always the case. But anyway, we've been talking for about an hour now, Jarrod, and what was planned to be about half an hour, 45 minutes. So we might wrap it up there. We did go down some rabbit holes. It always ends up happening. But these are important things to talk about, though. If people want to, come and find you, come and see you, social media and stuff, how can people find you? What's your kind of contact details and where you're working and so on?
Yeah, cool. So the easiest place of contact would be my Instagram. So holistic culture _ it's the
wrong camera that.
That's all right. So yeah, holistic culture _ it's just the emblem with the triquetra symbol. To reach me personally is j.rodstevo. And my email is myholisticculture@gmail.com. So feel free to reach out, connect. But Instagram's the main one for me at the moment. It's the easiest place of contact, and I'm sort of there, sort of daily to weekly, and happy to have a chat and connect.
Perfect. Well, make sure you send those links to me. I'll put them all in the episode description on the podcast and YouTube. Thank you so much for coming on the show today, Jarrod. It's been super helpful. I'm conscious that I'm still mouth breathing. You're probably like, oh my God, he's still mouth breathing. I'm trying. It's a work in progress. It's 39 years of mouth breathing. I'm getting there. Thank you so much for coming on the show, Jarrod. It's been a pleasure talking to you. I really wanted to get you on the show to talk about this because this is something that is personal to me as well with my mouth breathing, and it really has made a big difference to me. And I have seen it make a lot of difference to people as well. So thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your wisdom with us today.
No worries, Dr. Sir. It's been a pleasure. Thanks so much for having me. Appreciate your time.
You're welcome. And we appreciate your time, guys. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Meat Medic podcast. We'll see you in the next episode.